Welcome to At Work in America, sponsored by Paychex. At Work in America digs in behind the headlines and trends to the stories of real people making a difference in the world of work. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Bowes and Trish Steed.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the At Work in America podcast. I'm Steve Bowes, and I'm joined by Trish Steed. Hey, Trish. How are you today?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
I am well. I'm excited to be doing the show. We're still early in the year, and this is going to be a great show. It's one of our traditions here on the At Work in America HR Happy Hour Media Network podcast. Welcoming back our longtime friend Ben Brooks to the show here in a minute, and I'm excited for that conversation.
I am too. Ben always has so many lessons when he comes on the show because he presents such practical tips and advice about what organizational leaders can be doing. And especially this time of year, I know we usually have a sort of a midsummer check-in with him as well. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So you want to check that out. You want to watch it on YouTube as well. If you haven't yet, we will be posting on YouTube, and you will get to see both Trisha's dog, one of her dogs, and Ben's new dog as well, which is exciting stuff. But let's thank our friends at Paychex. Trish, of course. This episode of At Work in America is sponsored by Paychex, one of the leading providers of HR, payroll, retirement, and insurance solutions for businesses of all sizes. Are you ready to drive growth and tackle the challenges ahead in the new year? With insights from 600 business and HR leaders, Paychex has just released its 2024 Business Priorities Report, revealing the strategies you need to succeed. With rising interest rates and inflation, along with the struggles to keep top talent and develop leadership, it can be tough out there. But this report reveals that a whopping 98% of companies are planning to use artificial intelligence to help tackle these issues. And that's just the beginning. Packed with insider tips on improving employee benefits to automating workflows, this report is your strategic roadmap for success. Get ahead of the game and download your copy today at paychex.com/AWIA. That's paychex.com/AWIA. Business success this year is just a click away. Good stuff. Thank you, Paychex. Trish, this is going to be fun. Let's get on with the show. We are excited to welcome our guest and friend of the show today back with us for the 8th time. We have Ben Brooks. He is the founder and CEO of Pilot, an award-winning employee career development software platform. Inspired by his successful CEO and coaching practice, Ben saw an opportunity to democratize executive coaching and empower employees at scale. Ben, welcome back to the show for the 8th time. Fantastic to see you. How are you?
Happy New Year. I'm loving to be here. Been looking forward to this all week. And yeah, 2024 is off to a great start.
I'm so excited that you're here, Ben, and 8 times. I think we'd have to check. I think that's the record right now of anyone. Maybe Steve, we need like a special 10, anniversary when you hit the 10th episode, right?
We'll
He's
have to
gonna hit
come
it
up with
soon.
something because Ben will be the first one, I'm certain.
I look forward to it. So, but glad to be here. Lots to talk about, and the year's off to a great start.
Good. Well, you know what? For those who may not be familiar with you and with Pilot, and just in general, I know you had some life changes recently, so maybe just spend a couple minutes talking about who you are and what you do, and all about Pilot.
Great. Yeah. So Ben Brooks, I'm based in New York City, where I've lived for almost 20 years. I used to be in HR and the corporate side. Marcia McLennan owns Mercer and was the senior vice president of HR there. Learned a lot about all the potential that HR can bring and all the challenges it is to be in HR to deliver on that potential, and have a lot of empathy for the heroes that we have in the function and the profession. I, about 10 years ago, left the corporate world for a break. Never thought I'd be an entrepreneur, but founded an executive and CEO coaching practice. And pretty quickly after that, founded a separate company, Pilot, with the idea of how do we get more people to feel powerful at work. So our mission is we want everyone to feel powerful at work. So we'll be coming up on, it'll be 10 years that we've been working on this company later this year, which is hard to believe. You all have been great supporters along the way, and given us great visibility and encouragement, and things like the Pitch Fest and everything else that, Steve, you're involved in with the conference.
Sure.
And so it's been great. But we finished 2023 in a really good spot. One of the things I'm most proud of is we had 100% customer retention.
Wow. That's pretty much
Congratulations.
unheard of, Ben, because of you could be the greatest software and services provider in the world, but you're going to get some turnover, right? It just happens. Companies go out of
Yep.
business or
Yep.
they get bought out by another company, et
Yep.
cetera, et cetera. So 100% is remarkable. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Yeah, and we work with big, small, nonprofit, public, private, so it's a mix. And to your point, all the environmental factors that can happen. But and our net revenue retention is well over 100%. So we grew a lot of those accounts, and most of our competitors and a lot of folks in the space. Last year, 2023 was the year of efficiency, right? So a very easy way to cut costs is third-party services and software and consulting and things. And so that was a true testament to our team and our product and our culture. And another great accomplishment, we rolled out a new set of values and operating principles for the company that I think are going to form a book we're working on, but really kind of redefining professionalism and leadership at the every seat level, and in particular in a remote and hybrid context. And so we've got a bunch of those that we're actually starting to roll out to different companies, and really giving people a very aspirational sort of, catchy, exciting way to redefine what it looks like to be a modern professional in a remote and hybrid era. So great year we started off, and then we're off, a bunch of new customers, a bunch of new logos, a bunch of new things, and off to the races this year with some new customers already, and getting mentored by some big company, AMC Networks. We had a kickoff in our mentoring as a diverse supplier. We're a certified LGBT-owned business, and so we get mentored, and so EY has been a mentor of ours. And we got to go to their big entrepreneurship summit, and AMC Networks is now mentoring us. So we're just really pleased with the support we get from the business community in that regard. And the
On
other thing,
top of
some life updates. I did get a puppy last week.
that
So,
was it. I was just leading into
oh,
this.
Steve, okay, okay.
On top of that wasn't enough, Ben, you became a new dad, if you will,
Yeah.
of a puppy very recently. And I'm not even kidding. That is
Yeah,
to
show
say,
the puppy. We need.
Okay, this is
yes.
POP, proof of puppy. So this
Oh,
is this is little
Oh, look at
Jetson. He's
that.
taking a nap. So Jetson is a mini American Eskimo,
oh my
and
gosh.
he'll be about 16 pounds. Right now, he's 11 weeks. He's about 6.5 pounds. And
Remarkably chill, which is that's
very chill. He's
fantastic.
already we already have behavior lessons, and he already is litter box trained and knows how to retrieve. And he's but this is nap time right now, so we'll get a little puppy kiss and put him down.
Oh,
But
Awesome.
if you want to follow his adventures, he's on Instagram. Let's Jetson. Let's Jetson is his Instagram, and he's going to have a lot of sass, a lot of insights, a lot of things
oh,
going
look
on.
at him.
Oh,
A lot of cuteness to interrupt your doom scrolling. Okay.
I love it.
That is a lot of cuteness. You know
Yes.
what, too, though? I have to tell you, I think that it says something about people when they are pet owners, right? It gives you insight into personality and just how they interact with the world. And then to see it, to me, that's been my favorite part of since we started like pandemic times when people
Yes.
started working at home and you're seeing not just their space, but their pets.
Yes.
Love that. Love it. So,
And
welcome to Jetson.
remember that saying, bring your whole self to work from like a DEI perspective. It was like now it's sort of bring your work to your whole self, and you see
Yeah.
people
Right.
how they design or decorate, or you see the kids, or you see. I remember we were on a call with HSBC Bank, and this woman was visiting her dad in London, and they're Indian, but her parents live in. And he's in the background, and she's on a call, and he gets in the back of the camera and starts doing this dance and making silly faces, and she's mortified, and we're like loving it. We're like,
No,
"Who's
it's
your dad?" She's like, "He's the
great.
most fun person in the world." And so that we just started this whole relationship that he would have never been at the HSBC offices, but
Right.
Right.
she was in his home, and he had some fun with it. And it was, and that was like the first meeting, and our chemistry from then on was insane because of this human moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
I have a kind of follow-up on that then, Ben. I know we have other things to talk about too, but like, so I mean, obviously you're coaching a lot of different people. Obviously, started with the executive level, now you're
Yep.
coaching kind of all through an organization. Has that helped us as, workers being able to have those different types of more personal connections, or is it kind of too early to tell if that's actually helped us in the workplace by knowing people more
Yeah.
personally?
I mean, that if you study sort of diplomacy, people at the State Department and things like that, one of the key things to getting along is getting to know someone better.
Hmm.
And you talk about building a relationship, and some of our traditional ways of going out for drinks or to a football game or steak dinner or those sort of things are golfing, et cetera, are ways to do that. But sometimes we can build a relationship just by seeing that, we've got flowers in the background on our Zoom and talking about that and how I ended up getting flowers every week and why that's a thing. So I think that it certainly helped. And I think in particular for folks that maybe weren't always at the pinnacle of like in-person events, a lot of people, aren't out of the office. They get stuck behind. You have the most senior people, they're on the private jets or they're, at Davos, they're doing these things and they're out and about. So I think it just gives more visibility and kind of flattens the organization when we all have I guess, the democratization of our rectangles here on Zoom and Teams and everything else.
Yeah, Ben, and it's still going to be I think a semi-permanent, if not permanent, part of the fabric of work moving forward, right? Despite all the very well publicized executives from big companies, banks, for example, have done this in financial services and some tech companies as well, trying to get everybody to come back to the workplace in person, maybe as much as 5 times a week. Those are the outliers, really, right? And most of professional work has settled into a hybrid model of some
Yep.
fashion, right?
Yep.
And so these kinds of interactions that we're talking about and building relationships facilitated by some in person, but also virtually, is that's just going to be how work is going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the certain things, obviously, it's hard to do heart surgery over Zoom, although there is remote robotic surgeries are pretty incredible.
Right.
But nonetheless, there's certain work that definitely needs to be done in person. But this is sort of where it's going to be. And the other thing is that, the labor market, I heard PW or PNC Bank, as well as EY's chief economist. I got to hear the two of them talk last fall, and they talked about a structural change in basically labor and on a global basis, not just US, not just knowledge worker. And essentially, they're like, for the next 30 years, the prediction was labor is going to be tight. Basically, there's going to be more demand for labor than there is supply of people. And so ultimately, when that's the case, labor is going to get the talent, the employees are going to get what they want, which is fundamentally flexibility. And if you think a lot about inclusion, I mean, if you do research anything around women in the workplace, you want to make a female friendly workplace, provide flexibility. And whether someone's a parent or not, like there's a whole host of other reasons for that. And so I think that the technology allows for the flexibility, which drives the inclusion, and all of that makes you more desirable. And so then, companies are going to be forced to be competitive rather than just what someone wants. So, so-and-so bank executive wants everyone back. That's fine for now. But one of the predictions I talked about late last year was around the idea that this, who's in the office or how many days is sort of really masking the bigger structural issues around culture and workplace and, how do we collaborate in a hybrid environment? And we're really kind of focused on sort of proximity rather than performance.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I think that we've talked a lot over the last few years about hybrid, and that has a lot of focus and it will continue. But flexibility is just a more broad approach. Like you said, there are people that just have other reasons they need to be out of the office,
Yeah.
and it may not be on a regular cadence. But giving your people the, I guess, trust and empowering them to make those decisions, those life decisions about how they spend their work time and where they spend their work time is bound to help you with retaining them or even attracting them to begin with. We hear from Gen Z all the time when we're talking with them and doing our research that that's a big thing they want. They're not talking about hybrid specifically. They want just flexibility and consideration,
Yep.
right? So,
Totally. And I think there are important things in life. And I think, it used to be that worked was the primary dominant thing. And it was almost like in a room, if you're designing a room, you have the biggest piece of furniture, then everything else has to work around it.
mhm.
You have a big old couch in the living room, and then where's the end table go? Where's this? Work was that big couch. And it was like everything had to work around it. And I think, we're thinking differently about, hey, are these pieces maybe a little bit more interchangeable and a little bit more even in size in people's minds to navigate with? Because whether it's taking care of someone's well-being, their health, we talked about it. We had an internal meeting at Pilot about people's mental well-being in December. We think, oh, the holidays, da, 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 but the holidays can dredge up a lot of stuff around loss, right? Estrangement, love, family, like a lot of,
There's a lot of
money.
pressure often that comes with the holidays, right? If you're putting on
Absolutely.
the best holiday and trying to get your significant person in your life or your kids that just the right present, right? And all of that too.
Tons of pressure, tons of expectation, tons of family stuff. So we talked about, just we had an overview of our benefits. I became a benefits administrator again, and we just went through, like, we have a really fabulous EAP program through JustWorks that we work with their PEO, and we have Talkspace, and we got Aetna, and I actually said I will pay people out of my own pocket. I will pay them, everyone at the company, an incentive, through my personal Venmo and my personal checking account, if they went and booked an appointment with someone confidentially to work on anything. And you can work on, saving money or weight loss or nutrition or sleep or any addiction, whatever it may be. And so, I think it's one of those things in terms of, flexibility is also including taking care of ourselves. And even as simple as a weekly therapy appointment, sometimes you can't see a therapist on a Saturday morning. You have to see a therapist at Tuesday at 2 o'clock. And so to be able to say, hey, I've got a thing, and that thing needs to be my thing, and I can't really move my thing, right? That's a very important part of when we say flexibility. It may just be for 1 hour a week, but you have to be able to do something during quote unquote work hours. And that can make the world of difference if someone can get the care or support that they need.
Yeah, I agree. I think now that it's more commonplace and better accepted to even ask for that, because I think, probably when we all started our careers, that was less of an option to even ask for an hour to go seek therapy. Sorry, I have a puppy that wants to visit. He's like,
oh, there we go.
Not nearly as cute and young, but he's 17 and he is blind. This is Marco.
Hi, Marco. Marco's a cutie. I want to snuggle with Marco. Oh.
He's like, what's going on? Okay. All right. So he just needed a little. I love how dogs just need a little.
I'll say this quickly and as an aside before we get back into talking with Ben, for the benefit of folks listening to this on the podcast, right? We are posting these now. Part of our 2024 kind of new things we're doing, Ben, is we are posting these videos onto YouTube, which is not something we had done. So you can see Ben's cute dog and Trisha's cute dog. If you want to see them, you can pop over to our YouTube channel and actually watch as well as listen to this podcast. So I thought I'd say that.
And you can check out the fresh bouquet of flowers I was given too. So if you're not a dog person, you're just a flower, green thumb, there's something for everyone. So check out the video, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Ben, you mentioned quickly predictions and kind of trends and thoughts about 2024, which is one of the reasons why we always invite you back at the beginning part of the year and somewhat to talk a little bit about kind of what the new year might have in store in the world of work and in workplaces, et cetera. I know you did a whole hour on this at the end of the year, so maybe we won't dive into everyone, but is there one or two things that came up in those conversations you had at the end of the year that maybe are worth talking about today?
Yeah, so we'd partnered with Paychex, and I know they were a partner of yours as well, along with HR Executive Magazine, and we love partnering with all those groups. And Paychex in HRE had asked us to kind of do a bunch of research around kind of across HR, what are the big trends? And we narrowed it down to 5, and I'll go through them very, very, very quickly. One of them we already started to mention, but one is the continued focus on efficiencies. Mark Zuckerberg famously called 2023 the year of efficiency. A lot of organizations made it the year of efficiency, but then CFOs have gotten a taste and they want more, especially after Great Resignation and inflation and now, supply chain costs. There's a huge desire to cut costs and there's momentum. So year of efficiency, trend 1. Trend 2, the struggle over where people sit when they work, right? Hybrid or in person will continue, but that is sort of a false battle that masks the real culture and collaboration issues and modernizing the way we work. So there's going to still be a tug of war, but we're really just avoiding actually some of the things we talked about before. The third, DEI is going to remain a very competitive priority. It is hype in the media cycle right now that it's all being slashed, et cetera. We found a bunch of research that DEI spend increased last year. And, a lot of folks, again, what's changing is the messaging, because they're having to be a little bit less, DEI in all capital letters. But the underlying with the labor, market and things like that, organizations need to have labor that they can get from all pools, right? And they need to represent customers from multiple segments and global. So it's remaining a competitive priority. And we've actually seen very little pullback in DEI. It just is getting implemented in a slightly clever, less sort of hang a banner on the front of the building way. The fourth trend is around pushback on HR tech expenses and investments. There's a lot more scrutiny, right? 10 years ago, everyone was buying Slack on a corporate card and doing this, and it was fast and loose. Procurement, finance, IT security is locking down the ability to turn on little things here and there and try this. So the bar has gotten much higher for HR to try to bring in something even on a trial or proof of concept basis.
Okay.
And again, it ties back to the year of efficiency, but they know the easiest cost to cut is the one you never take on in the first place. And so there's this big bouncer at the door. That's a huge, so it's harder for HR to innovate now because there's more red tape and strings. And then the fifth is AI. Peak, peak, peak hype cycle, extremely low delivery on promise. So AI is going to change the world, but we haven't seen it yet, right? I asked ChatGPT 4, which I love and I use for a lot of great things, and just to get me the head count of 10 different companies that I listed, and it couldn't do it. And it needed me to feed them all individually and this and that. And I talked to some engineers and they're like, yep, it's like not able to do something that'd be like a very simple thing. And so there's a lot of the hallucinations, everything else. So especially in HR is one of the last places that I think we're going to see AI implemented because it's too risky to F up. Imagine AI doing all your payroll, and all of a sudden it thinks some people are part-time that are not because they were on vacation, and then their paycheck is wrong. Or your employee relations and your labor compliance, or your staffing assignments, or your performance ratings, or your comp structures. AI is going to not go to these sort of touch the nerve things. AI is going to go primarily to engineering because everyone talks about marketing and content marketing, writing blogs. Marketing people are cheap relative to engineers. When you can have engineering be more efficient on workflows and automation and concurrent programming and testing, that's where we're going to see where engineers are really expensive and they're really scarce, right? Really hard to find, really hard to keep. You're going to see more technology deployed in those sorts of areas. And so as it relates to HR, every media company out there is AI is this and this and this. Almost zero CHROs I'm talking to really care. They care about the business priorities that they have. So those are, Steve, I went a little long, but those are the 5 big trends.
No, that's great, Ben. And I'm sure we can link back out to the full hour-long discussion where you had about diving into these trends.
Yeah, we have the recording, a summary, we have a takeaway tip sheet, we have a bunch of things we'd love to provide to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. And I think they're all interesting, and it sort of lines up, Trish, I think, with a lot of what we've heard and what we've done, our research for 2024 as well. I think the one maybe we could dive into a bit more here on this conversation would be kind of the subtle changes in DE&I specifically,
Yes.
right? Because as you mentioned, we have seen a lot of media and a little bit of energy and pushback, if you will, right? On wait, is DE&I really, should companies really be investing in it? Is it fundamentally correct? Is it unfair?
Yep.
There was some fall off from the Supreme Court decision, which affected college and university admissions, right?
Yep.
Which was maybe about halfway through 2023, I think that went down. And so while that specifically that decision was about colleges and university admissions, some organizations are feeling, boy, we better think about our own DE&I initiatives, big and small, right? To make sure we're not going to be the next group that's perhaps taken even to court about these things. I'd love for you to share some thoughts around that and how you think perhaps that maybe it's been a little bit too much hype about the pullback from DE&I.
Yeah, I think that certainly there is a lot of conversations happening, right? And in particular, DEI became a bit of in America at least, we're a pretty divided country right now on a lot of different factors. And DEI turned out being one of those things that wound up as a political talking point, that and even ESG, right? You think this innocuous sort of thing that was, all of a sudden ESG was and everything else. And so you've got certain state legislatures, banning, books or offices of DEI, at state colleges and universities, and these things that are symbolic in nature, but it's meant to be the kind of declaring war. And some of this is, if you think of stasis, right? If you have any sort of system in nature, things swing, and you often kind of, you look, part of the reason, that if you look at Trump getting elected, Obama moved the country forward in a lot of ways, and maybe some folks felt too far, right? And so part of Trump getting elected was kind of like, making it great again, was kind of bringing it back to some middle ground. We've made a lot of progress in DEI, right? But there's kind of a pullback to what is this thing. So you always, with change in any sort of group or system and environment, when you make a lot of progress, you're always going to get this slide back to try to pull to some sort of stasis. And that's not about the content of DEI. That's just about change, right? And DEI and the landscape. And obviously with George Floyd's murder, a lot of companies made a lot of public proclamations You look at the 2010s and the aughts, but really the tens, LGBTQ progress was like a rocket ship in terms of the amount of things that happened. I was involved in Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, and we got marriage and all these other different things, non-discrimination. But nonetheless, a lot has changed. And so there has been some blowback. And you look at the media will talk about tech layoffs, right? And oh my gosh, Microsoft laid off, 20,000 people. But the story doesn't say in the last 2 years, Microsoft hired 200,000 people and then they laid off 20. So they're up net 180, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't get there because that's not a great headline that says, Microsoft is up, this many factors. It's 20,000. And again, I don't want to minimize anyone losing a job. I've lost a job. It's a sensitive thing. So I'm not minimizing the human impact of that. But is to look at the whole picture. Say, oh, so-and-so tech company let go of their head of DEI. Doesn't mention that they're going to backfill them because that person maybe wasn't a culture fit or maybe wasn't set up to succeed or they're trying to change their strategy. But in general, organizations are realizing, in particular, the board of directors of public companies, if you want to get their attention, say ESG. ESG, ESG. And they know that they're being benchmarked. Dow Jones and other organizations have indices. Talent development is a part of that. Supplier diversity, corporate social responsibility, diversity, equity, inclusion. All of that is in a metric that then is looked at by institutional investors, by analysts. And if you want to know what matters in a public company, it's what's on the earnings call and the analyst briefings, the investor updates. And these things ladder up to things that matter at that level. And it's not the performative nature of, oh, we got to make some big statement or do this or do that. That's not changing. In fact, the need, the focus on ESG is increasing at that level. What's sometimes changing is that I'm seeing organizations that, said like DEI was going to just change everything and is a way to be so enthusiastic are sort of saying, hey, we need to embed this as a part of everything we do. And rather than have it be so front and center, they're saying we should consider DEI in our responsible sourcing. We should consider DEI in how we assess talent and pay equity and do comp. We should consider DEI in how we do marketing and multicultural marketing and target different groups. And so it becomes this like capability and this lens rather than this like warrior movement, which again, some people felt excluded from some of these things. And so that's, Steve, where I'm seeing it. I'd love to know, Trish and Steve, what are you seeing in the market? Because again, I think that the news story, the DEI is dead, is just not true. It's just a little bit less loud.
Well, I love the examples you shared. I think, especially that sort of last minute you've talked, really it's about the progress that an organization makes when you are at the point where you can have it embedded into what you're doing, right? I go back as far as the 90s when it started really coming to the forefront at the beginning, where it was basically a checklist. Have I hired this many people, right? So you move from sort of having it be that front and center, get everybody on board. To me, it's such a good thing when it becomes part of just that thing that's woven into the culture. Yes, of course, we're going to think about it throughout every single phase of an employee life cycle. And I don't know, it's almost, it's obviously better to have it front and center when you have nothing that you're starting from, right? But to me, it's a better step when you get to the point where it is embedded. And I think that's, I wrote down the rest of the story. I don't know if you remember Paul Harvey. He used to be on like AM radio, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
You can even get it on a podcast. And what I always liked about that was it is the rest of the story. And and you're right, with so many things that we hear about in the news, it is a soundbite. Other than, if you're an HR leader, you're a business leader, and you're thinking about this, where would you tell people to go to sort of help get the rest of the story, especially around DEI? Because I think sometimes that's maybe a miss where we don't really know where to find out some of those facts to fact check the headlines. Do you have a site or two, or just a resource or a person that you kind of go to as an expert in that?
Well, there's a saying, sometimes I can't hear what you're saying because of how loud you're being. And I tend to avoid people on the polls.
Okay.
Either way, people that are like DEI is evil and awful and we have to get rid of it, or everyone, we have to redo all of society and make it, like restructure everything. Like either of those are like extremist views. So part of it is that, one, I keep a collection of people I follow on social media that have different views, so I'm always informed. But I'm always looking, you look at, Bloomberg, for instance. Bloomberg, has a certain editorial standard, a certain number of factual third-party citations that are numerical per words. It's in their Bloomberg style guidelines. So when I read a Bloomberg article, I actually get a lot of data. right, from something like that. Or I spend more time, looking at like LinkedIn and some of the conversations around some of these articles, because that's kind of the rest of the story. Can sometimes be like, well, it's great that, Axios put this piece up, or the New York Times, or, Fox News, or whatever the organization is, doesn't matter. But here's some additional texture, right? Because only so much can fit in 1,000 words or in a 3-minute segment on cable. So I think part of it is also kind of getting some context in my social networks. I do think LinkedIn has been a fairly respectful place to talk about some of this. Sometimes it gets a little bit polarizing. But, again, look at that. No barking. We're working on no barking with the buzzer, which is really good. But I think, it's also, you got to do your own independent analysis and critical thinking. Like, does this make sense? Or if I only hear it from one person who's super fervent about it, am I actually like, is that really who I should be believing? And again, getting a diversity of perspectives about diversity, including people that are sort of not believers or anti. I try to, bring all of that in and then kind of synthesize it myself and do my own thinking.
I love those suggestions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Ben, thank you. And I'd say in general, what I'm seeing too tends to agree with this positioning as well. It's maybe pulling back from some of the DEI initiatives as very front and center and very hyped up, if you will, if that's the right word, or and maybe just making them a little bit more ingrained into processes, try to incorporate them more into just the everyday fabric of the organization, emphasize their importance, but not necessarily maybe because certain executives, right, as you said, maybe don't want to have to fight these battles in the media, but they would still want to continue this work because they know it's important for customers, for employees, for communities, right? And for certainly it's a whole nother show to talk about what the newest generation of workers who are entering the workforce will tend to expect and demand from their organizations, which always it happens with every generation, right? Then the younger cohort tends to be a little more open-minded, a little bit more interested in some of these issues, right, than perhaps older folks are. So I do sense that as well. Like so I guess like you said, much like with layoffs, right? Because layoffs make the news, right?
Oh
And they
yeah.
scream headlines, but yet the unemployment rate in the United States is very near its generational 50-year low, right?
Oh, yeah.
Job openings are still quite near all-time highs, right? All the things, right? And talk to organization after organization after organization, and difficulty finding talent and keeping talent, right?
Yep.
That's not changed
Yep.
at all. So
And
we'd encourage folks.
but yet the narrative could be, oh, the economy's in the tank, and yet the stock market's been on a frickin' tear.
Stock market's at an all-time high, right? Yeah.
Inflation is stalled, gas prices are low, all the stuff. But then the narrative is like the economy's bad, right?
Yeah.
I think that was where you have to, like, again, do your own independent thinking and analysis, not just buy into the narrative. And I will say that the big shift in DEI that's happened, at least in my 15 or 20 years of being a part of kind of the movement, and I'm definitely a pro DEI, and I'm an out CEO, and we're certified diverse owned business, et cetera. But it's moved from sort of a moralistic cause of like the right thing to do, which is sort of what you got early on the adoption curve of DEI was, yeah, like this from a values or morals perspective. Most of the laggards have gotten on board because it's a competitive necessity. To your point about we can't get enough talent. Well, if we seem exclusionary to women, let's say, you're a huge segment of talent. You're going to be repelling. You're not going to fill jobs. You're not going to be able to service revenue. You're going to have lower profits, right? So that's where it's become a competitive thing. Or, hey, like Diageo, one of our customers, they sell spirits and liquor. And one of the fastest growing categories is non-alcoholic spirits.
Yeah.
Yes.
They have a great product called Seedlip that I love, and and it's actually a liquor that they still pull the liquor out of it, and it's made in England. It's beautiful, the bottles of it. But like, if you didn't have a perspective of people, if you only hired people that drank at Diageo, drank alcohol, like you wouldn't have people considering these segments. So it doesn't always have to be race or gender, right? It can be kind of it can be faith, it can be perspective, it can be background, it can be military service, like. I think capital D on the diversity side, but then part of the inclusion is how do we bring up and have it not be the Antichrist to say, should we make a alcohol-free spirit at a company where spirits hung the moon, right? Yeah. And no different than a car company saying, should we make an EV when we're internal combustion engine? That's also part of it. And so part of this is back to the competitiveness. And can you make a profit or achieve whatever the shareholder responsibility is or the fiduciary responsibility of the organization? can you do that in a world where, in a country where we're going to be majority minority demographics in 2040, where all of the new expansion markets are people of minority demographics? This is just about like, can we be successful? Not like, is this moralistically the right cause?
Yeah.
It's like, can we operate in this context?
Yeah, we're marching just the demographics alone, Ben, in many parts of the country, many parts of the world, certainly here, we're moving to the point where, say, diversity hiring is just hiring now, right? It's not diversity hiring anymore. It's just how you have to hire to keep your organization functioning, right, at the level to which you need. So that's what's really happening. And I think smart organizations have understood that for a while.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
great
think
stuff.
too, I like when you were sort of talking about, all these things in relation to people, in relation to the workplaces, they all ebb and flow. And when you think about the fact that human resources, Steve and I were talking the other day, human resources is still relatively young
Yeah.
as a practice, right? I'm 53. Human resources did not exist when I was born, right?
Mhm.
So that's young. And then you think about, even if we're talking about 20 years of having any sort of focus on DEI, we're pioneers. What you're seeing organizations do is actually be pioneers in regard to how you can have a more successful business by opening your mind and expanding who you hire. And I love the example of the, sort of the non-alcoholic spirits, because you're right. I think when you really think about what's going to help your business be better and hire people who can help you do that, then it starts falling in place a little bit more than sort of like that big focus on it, right? It's just, how do you want to be a better business and to be a pioneer maybe in your industry by having really good practices around the way you hire, period, right?
And,
So,
and, and we're tapping
yeah.
into some of the most tribal, humanistic
Mm-hmm.
biases and prejudices. So we say DEI like, is this just like corporate initiative? It's sort of like, oh, we're going to put things in the cloud, like great, like digitization. It's a trend, like global, like. But DEI is getting different people from different tribes to be together, and
Mm-hmm.
from an evolutionary perspective, that was not like you figured out who was different and who was safe and who wasn't, and pattern recognition, and so this is something that is activating all sorts of history and traumas and biases and beliefs. And so it's not a simple thing versus saying, hey, we're going to make I-9s digital, or we're going to do an engagement survey on a mobile device, right? Or we're going to figure out how to do, pay on demand. Like, those things are, you can kind of get around, and they're just less sort of historically fraught or have a lot of emotion or other things around them. So HR is doing something that really is actually a fundamentally shifting the way humans interact and behave, which is like the hardest behavior change you could imagine. So no wonder it's a little rocky. No wonder we're hitting some potholes and having a couple blown out tires. Like, we're on a rocky journey, but it's one that we continue to need to go down. And I think part of change and driving change, my friend Robbie Hammond, he co-founded the High Line here in New York, which is the
Mm-hmm.
elevated park. And it took him like 20 years to make that happen. Him and his co-founder Josh. He said, if you want to really drive change over the long term, you have to be like the tide coming in. It's coming. It's slow, it's steady, but God damn it, it's coming. And so that's how you just like to take this view of like the tide. So I feel like with the DEI, the tide's going to go in and out. It's going to ebb and flow, but the
Mm-hmm.
tide is eventually going to keep coming back in and
That's
keep
right.
coming back in. And I think that's where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and too, if you're in HR listening to this, it's about making everyone feel comfortable in the workplace, right? And that's often when we segregate each other out into different groups, it's when we feel less comfortable, right? Because we don't always understand where someone else is coming from. So if you create situations and opportunities for people to come together in a comfortable way to be able to ask questions of each other and learn, then you see those companies succeeding, right? It's where they don't feel like they have that commonality or common place to, and again, whether that's an electronic place or whether it's a physical place, right?
Mhm.
But you have to be able to have people come and celebrate that. And I think too, you still hear it, always irritated me, and I still hear it. It's like, you'll talk to people or hear them say, well, I like this company or this group because it's full of like-minded people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like, and we're still saying that in this day and age. And so when you do that, that flies right in the face of, yes, but you're also not getting diverse perspectives and learning and growing in ways that might elevate your business. So,
And
You
I'll
know,
just
yeah.
mention, the Ford F-150. My dad drove a bunch of those trucks over the years. The number one
Mhm.
best-selling vehicle in America, legendary product. Their
Yeah.
biggest growth opportunity was with women. And one of the things that they did is the tailgate. When you lower that tailgate, it's heavy, right? An old like
Mm.
Oh,
truck
yeah.
tailgate. And so you got groceries, you got this, you got whatever. And so they spring loaded the tailgate to make it less heavy for women. Well, guess what? Turned out, guess what? A less heavy tailgate was better for guess what? Everyone.
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 Mhm.
Everyone.
There you go.
People that were older, people that had their hands full, people with disabilities, people that were just tired after a long day at work and didn't want to thrust their
Yeah.
body to get an 85-pound tailgate up. And so part of this is we have to also realize that the research shows, and people's perception generally support this, that after DEI initiatives are implemented, all boats rise. It's not just for the
Yes.
minority demographics, that everyone, I mean, Diageo is making more money by selling, Seedlip, right? And the stock price of Diageo goes up, and they've got more things to stock to satisfy more consumers, including Gen Z, who's not drinking hardly at all, and all this stuff. And so they can be competitive. And so everyone's stock options go up, not
Mhm.
just the people that benefit from a non-alcoholic product, right? So part of this is it's like you have to get out of the zero sum thing. Like
Yes.
everyone wins with a lighter tailgate or with non-alcoholic spirits or selling Tylenol PM to gay men or whatever the DEI like business thing is.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt anyone if you get out of the scarcity mindset.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories coming back that we heard on this show a couple years back, Tris probably will remember this too, is we were doing a show on neurodiversity. We've done a number of shows on
Mhm.
neurodiversity in the workplace, but
Great.
we were doing one with a professor who works in Vanderbilt, Trish, the Frist Center
Mhm.
for
At the Frist
Autism
Center.
Studies. And
Wow.
we were talking about interviewing, right? And what are
Mhm.
some of the things companies should do or can do to help make the job interview process a little more accessible and a little bit more opening and welcoming, and give neurodiverse candidates a better chance to succeed. And he talked about structured interviews and sharing the questions and
Yep.
pacing and don't do 17 people in a panel trying to interview
Yep.
one person because they feel
Yep.
being ganged up on. And then it turns out all those things are just good interviewing
For
practices for
everyone.
Right.
everyone, right? That
For
was the
Right.
point.
everyone.
Right. Right.
I don't want a panel with 19 people
Yeah.
on Teams or Zoom. It's going to feel like the Inquisition. I'm going to feel like I'm in front of Congress and everyone's trying to get a
Mhm.
soundbite in, right? That's a nightmare. And so I think that to your point, I mean, that's where often what's good for, and again, we've often made products or services
Mhm.
around one use case or one demographic. And
Yeah.
it's often these other use cases that break the status quo, but in a way, again, that's more flexible, right? That's more adaptive, that's more efficient, those sort of things. So I think that's the part of it where we can get excited and rally around, wow, our products and services are better and our experiences and our employee experience. Like, why wouldn't we do this?
Right.
Ben, we love having you on at the beginning of the year for sure to help us set up for the year, but also to feel sort of good and charged up about like way things are going. And I feel that way, honestly. So that's
Great.
exciting. So thank you for that. Uh, we will, of course, Ben, you're everywhere. You're great at sort of communicating, participating, sharing. We saw your new puppy today. Ben, people can find you on LinkedIn, of course, which you're
Yes.
pretty active on there. The website is pilot.coach for all things pilot. So we'd encourage folks to check that out. And we'll also get some links out to the work Ben did at the end of the year around predictions and trends for going into this year. We really only got a chance to talk in depth about one of them, but there's four
Sure.
other that Ben mentioned quickly that I love folks get the chance to listen to that back as well. So, but great stuff, Ben. It's so good to see you, and congratulations on the new dad aspect of your life as well.
Thank you. No, it's great to be here. And I'll just say, if anyone's looking at developing emerging leaders, that's a big trend we're hearing. And that's where helping a lot of organizations are looking at succession further down in the
Mhm.
organization. People that maybe in back office or corporate functional roles, heaven forbid, HR people get leadership development and people development for their own. And so that's a big area of passion for me this year. And one of my personal goals is to get more emerging leaders, not the top of the house, not the most senior executives, but to really, develop emerging leaders, because that's the future of succession that diversifies the organizations, that improves hiring, that accelerates technology adoption, that changes flexibility. A lot of the things we have ties back to structure and generation and different perspectives. So that's an area that I'm really working on. So if anyone's listening today and wants to talk about, emerging leaders, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Check out Jetson on Instagram. He's real cute. I mean, that's my plug. No sponsors, nothing like that. He's just pure joy. He's sponsoring love and puppiness.
Oh,
So
I love it.
Love it.
All right. Great stuff. Trish, great stuff. Good to see you. Great to see Ben as well. This is a great way to start the year. I'm glad we're able to do it. Ben, come back and see us in next January, please. And thanks again. And thanks to our friends at Paychex, of course, for all their support.
love
And they've
paychecks.
been great to us, with us again in 2024. I think I might have mentioned that before, but it is true. They are with us again this year. And we thank them for all the support. Remember to catch all the show archives at hrhappyhour.net. Listen to the podcast wherever you get the podcast. And hopefully, if you're on YouTube watching us and you made it to the end, congratulations. Good to see you. Maybe drop us a comment, drop us a like. We'd love to see that too. So thanks so much again. My name's Steve Bose, for Trish Steed, for our guest, Ben Brooks. This has been At Work in America. We will see you next time, and bye for now.